Join channel here over at subscribe, so check out the Odyssey and Rumble. So something is killing the comic industry. Yeah, anti-white racism and diversity. No. It's more complicated than that. No, actually, it isn't. That's pretty much it. So Salkowicz says superhero comics are in a creative rut. Who, if anyone, will fly to their rescue? How cute. He's confused over what is killing comics, but he doesn't have any solutions. He mentions the recent tech layoffs and assumes that that is somehow correlated because the 20-plus-year-old tech guys were supporting the comic book industry. Okay, it's odd that he doesn't mention the woke content killing sales. And I know he doesn't agree with that line of reasoning, but that's not the point. He knows that many people do, but he doesn't address it at all. In fact, he skips any criticism of the content of the comics. His whole article doesn't ever point to anything concrete. No criticism of the comic industry, the stories, the narrative at all. So the whole article doesn't actually say anything. It just talks in circles for a few paragraphs and concludes with nothing. I mean, it's like the perfect doublespeak article because he doesn't actually say anything. He knows what people are saying about comics. He knows the common refrain. They're woke. He doesn't touch on that issue. No, don't get me wrong. He doesn't agree with it, but you also know it's the common. It's in the lexicon. It's part of the counter argument is that concept of comics are being woke. He knows that. I know he doesn't agree with it, but to not mention that there's a group of people that is one of their complaints about the comic industry, well, he just skips it in its entirety. But I have an answer for Salkowicz. Diversity is killing comics, the anti-white racism, the endless hatred against the beautiful blonde and red-haired people. The Salkowiczes of the world do not have an answer to what is killing comics, but I do. And when I proffer such, the immediate response is deflection and ad hominem attacks, except that I'm actually telling you that the anti-white racism, the erasure, the replacement, the overuse of these purse puppies and Mary Sues is killing comics. You know, you can make a bad guy brown. You can it's like in comics, it's just as simple as making them. Can you make an antagonist with dark hair, dark eyes? No, sir, that is a bridge too far. Well, wait, really? Like in all the comics? Yeah, we just can't do that. So when a reader sees dark hair, dark eyes, they know that the character is coded to be a purse puppy. Well, that's just something that's unavoidable. Well, you could avoid it just by simply making them occasionally the bad guys. They won't do that because they'll get dragged on Twitter if they do. So I'm giving you the answer for why people are leaving comics, because I read them and I talk to people and I represent millions of people who are sick of this anti-Europa hatred. So there's your answer, or at least that's a answer, but it also represents millions of voices. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking that you're alone in your opinion. Comics didn't used to be this hateful and anti-white, and people bought them. So can you do the math on that correlation? They were a part of the culture, at least in some small way. Then SJW parasites slithered in, like the vermin they are, and took over, replacing the older guys with younger, cheaper SJW propagandists. The problem was these worms loved diversity, and the audience not so much. So translation, replacing the blonde Europeans that people love with pox, walks, purse puppies, and suddenly every mugger, robber, terrible person who commits large-scale malincense acts, every evil group is suddenly blonde, or blue, at least blue-eyed and green-eyed. In case sometimes they shave the heads to conceal it, but they always zoom in on the eyes, and you see they're green or blue. Hey, we love diversity also. I'm talking like the overuse of motorcycle gangs in comics. It's just so friggin' so those cities are actually overrun with like Nordic stereotype motorcycle gangs. Yeah, that's right, bucko. Oh, is this planet Earth? Anyway, so we love diversity. That means we want to see comics with English, Swedish, Italian people because they're all diverse from each other. We want representation for the diverse tribes of Europa. And as a consequence, as SJWs came in, sales dropped. So that's a pretty straight line there. Every story became a moral lesson, but the lesson was blonde people are the evil ones. They're the ones that always take the role of the antagonist. But we know that is ridiculous. It's literally the definition of the racist oppression and marginalization of the peoples of Europe. Every comic now is Frankfurt School anti-white propaganda 101. They tell a devil dinosaur story about something about the sun girls don't like their frizzy hair, and to set the story up, a blonde girl calls frizzy hair frizzy. Except it's more likely it's not going to be a blonde girl talking to her in the first place. In the Star universe, you set them up as antagonists to each other, so they would probably avoid each other. It's more likely going to be another girl of her tribe who straightened her hair. Except comics can't have that scene where one girl is natural hair and one girl straighten their hair and they have a back and forth, because then Twitter will pretend to have this pseudo outrage. He goes, so do you want the antagonist to just literally be a blonde hair, blue eyed character every single time? Yeah, that's a simple answer. You can look at Disney's Proud Family for the example of that. It's just I can't help but notice Proud Family Disney that literally blonde hair, blue eyed characters are the bad characters, the antagonists in your comic. What's going on? What's going on, Disney? We know what's going on. So in the comic universe, they always set up the blondes or sometimes the red haired. But I mean, the thing is, it's the eye colors, blue and green eyed, as the antagonists. And yes, as someone pointed out in the comments, I know that Europeans also have Irish style dark hair and dark eyes occasionally. But comics won't show that because in their mind, dark Europeans are POCs, or they're hard to distinguish from, I don't know, other like most of the world has dark hair, dark eyes. It's the rarity of green eyes, green and blue eyes, blonde and red hair that makes them so special. But in their minds, those standards of like the Nordic Aryan stereotypes is the ultimate peak standard of Ubermensch beauty. Wow, that was a lot of hot words. Probably should not have combined those words so close. So that's how they think. All their supreme talk, they say, it's just projection. They are obsessed with race because they hate themselves and they're weighted down with jealousy for the more beautiful blonde people, instead of just accepting their ugly limitations and living life without being a hater. Why? Only kidding. Why would we support this? We know we're awesome. We're not the problem, and people are not buying the comics. So that one is pretty simple. It's just a cogent response. One person's opinion that represents millions of people. No, you don't. We're gonna gaslight you into thinking your opinion is the only one. But I know it's not. I mean, that's the power of Gab and Telegram and Odyssey and Bit Chute. Is like, you're not alone. You start putting out videos and you start, you think, oh, we all kind of are on the same page on a lot of issues. We should probably team up. So that is that's one simple response. Diversity is cringe, and we can't support anti-white hatred. But when we say this, we either get a blank stare as their NPC minds get the blue screen of confusion, or we get, remember Windows XP, or we get the stimulus response, the if-then action. Hey, I remember Windows 2K. When they're challenged, they don't stop to think. It bypasses cognition. It just goes to a straw man. So what you're saying is, and then an ad hominem, so you are, insert Saul Alinsky label here, instead of addressing the argument at the probative and relevant apex of the argument. They drop below that to go to the logical fallacies. That's from the pyramid of argumentative techniques, because they don't have a response. What are they going to say? That they've been brainwashed by a generation of cultural Bolsheviks to hate Europeans and only Europeans and not to focus on any other groups? That they haven't thought for themselves their whole lives? Because that would be closer to the truth. Nobody likes to wash off the brainwashing, but like you go, well, how do you know that you guys have and the SJWs haven't? Because we're over target and we're getting deplatformed from the banks, the payment processors, online payment processors, PayPal, Patreon, Stripe, Foursquare, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, Morgan Chase Bank, MasterCard, credit card processors, Airbnb, rental car companies. We're getting put on no-fly list. We're getting banned off social media and payment processors and attacked in mainstream media and mainstream social media. We're the ones who are over target. That's how I know we washed off the brainwashing. And if you're still an SJW kid and you're younger, it's like, think about that for a second. The ones who are over target catch anti-aircraft fire. They get deplatformed. They get fired. They what happened to James O'Keefe? Like, he started to come close to a target. It's like, oh, you're out at Project Veritas. Oh, that's weird. You guys are willing to nuke a whole company, or potentially nuke a whole company, or I mean, like, to get rid of one guy that'll take years to recover from. I mean, he's just one example, but I mean, how many other examples of like that? My point is that's a piece of evidence. If you're on the left and you hear this, like, it's a piece of evidence. The people on the right who are getting deplatformed and kicked out of banks and attacked by the mainstream media and getting doxxed and fired and chased down by the mainstream media and the financial institutions, those people are over target. That's why the machine is coming for them. If you're on the left and you're saying the same thing that Bank of America is saying, that's the Suri guy is saying, the Hungarian guy, I think, You're saying the same thing. The big banks, Coca-Cola, Nike, Twitter, Facebook, Google is saying, Yahoo, all those massive companies. You're on the left. You're raging for the machine. You're saying you're in lockstep accord with big tech, big media, big business. You're saying the same things as CNN is saying. You're not over target because you're a puppet. You're a useful idiot. The people who are over target are the ones who find themselves driving around and suddenly their credit cards are canceled because those people are over target. The machine is coming for them. That should be obvious. Like, how many times we got to say that? And you go, oh, well, they're just getting deplatformed by the $1 trillion banking industry and attacked by the media because they're the bad people. And it's okay for $1 billion industries to attack them. Or they're the ones who are actually speaking truth to power and rage against the machine. No, 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 no. Their words are actually harmful. And so these $1 billion companies need to deplatform them and destroy their lives. Okay, I mean, just like think about that for a sec. Some of them do. That's why I make the videos. Is some of them eventually it will click from them. They go, oh, were we the patsies the whole time? Because like, I have the same values as Nike and Bank of America and the Hungarian guy who funds the world. So I have the same values as them. Oh, maybe I'm not over target. Maybe I'm just a useful idiot who's headed for the lined up last cigarette in the wall when the time comes. It's like, yeah, that's what happens. History just has a way of repeating. Anyway, comic books. They're pretty anti-white. That's why people aren't buying them. I mean, that's a short summary of the video that Salkowicz is not going to not ever going to address. In fact, his whole article he doesn't talk about anything. The one thing he said that was concrete was the tech industry. But I mean, literally the whole rest of the article doesn't actually say anything. It's pathetic. I mean, what's the point of writing he puts together a 5-paragraph article. He doesn't actually say anything. He says what's happening. Sales are flat. You think, so at some point, are you going to talk about the content? No, no, no. There's just too many books. Okay, yeah. I get that. You're talking about the financial aspect of it. But why aren't the individual books selling? They would have to do with the content, perhaps. But nowhere in this article do you mention the content. You mentioned tech. That's so pathetic. The tech industry. Stale creative, because you're terrified of saying anything. You're never going to say, oh, well, a common refrain I'm hearing from a segment of the audience is what they're saying. I'm not saying this, but what they're saying is the comics are woke and they're anti-white. So would the comic industry care to address this issue? It's like, you go, yeah, we're woke and anti-white. That's what we got into comics for. Like, there's nothing to address. And if they say, oh, well, those people don't need to buy our comics, it's like, well, yeah, that's what's happening. And the industry is slowly disappearing because you're making comics. Like, their argument is, well, it's comics are left-wing propaganda. What do you have to say to that comic industry? It's like they would be shocked that a left-winger would ask that question, but they don't have to worry about it because nowhere in this article does he ask that question. In fact, nowhere does he talk. He doesn't even mention Comicsgate, which is like, this isn't an article. If this was an article, you would say a little bit about what the other side is saying. You know about Comicsgate. You're aware of Comicsgate. To not even bring it up, it's like, oh, people are selling stuff outside of the mainstream. Yeah, and you mentioned one example. The Stephen King's kid is selling something to go, but you never mention Comicsgate or anything else. And then you're talking about oversaturation. So like you're seeing movies, so there's like billions of dollars in movies that are selling really well. Yeah. Okay, buddy. So do the comics look like the movies? No. What do you mean? You got like it's all girl power, pox walks, diversity hires in the comics, like Riri Williams instead of Iron Man. So why don't you make the comics look like the movies? The guy writes an article and he doesn't address actually anything real because he's terrified of actually saying something real. So he writes this. I mean, this is pathetic. And you look at him and it's like, yeah, he knows. What's he gonna do? I mean, he's not stupid. Anyone who's writing full time is not stupid, but they're in their own echo chamber. And like you bring this to his attention. It's like, you didn't say anything in the article. It's like, yeah, he knows. Like, you get him aside, turn off the mics, and go, like, his answer would probably be, yeah, what am I going to say? If I actually say something real, if I actually present both sides, I just going to get fired from Gizmodo or ICV2. You just get fired. You never, he writes articles for all, like, people write articles. They're not just writing for Mary Sue, Gizmodo, ICV. They're writing, Forbes and all these. They're writing for all this kind of stuff. It's like you actually presented both sides of an argument, that would all dry up. And each article is a few dollars in his pockets, like that would all, like, you just all your articles that you sent out to Forbes and Gizmodo would just suddenly get rejected. It's like, we're going in a different direction because you presented both sides. So he goes through a whole, like, this is 10 paragraphs and he says nothing during the whole 10 paragraphs. And even when he writes this, he knows he's saying, I mean, this thing is so pathetic. The longer I think about it, it's like the more pathetic it is to be. I don't know how much you made off this article. It's like, oh, it was a $700 article. It took like an hour to put together. I'm just guessing it, but you said nothing. It's like, that's fantastic. Or however much you made off this article. To just write articles that are just nothing. They're just space fillers. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, check out, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next